First Book of Moses, Bereshith, Chapter 1, First Creation by Elohim. In the former time periods, as a powerful sign of working, chief son and heir Elohim filled with choice things, behold, as a sign Shemayim, the place of the names, and behold, as a sign Aratz, the chief place of running. But observe how Aratz was unorganized and empty, and Shishak rose up from the deep waters, went up to its face, but the Ruach Elohim, as a wall of protection, moved violently upon the surface of the waters. Elohim then declared, light he will exist, and light he will exist. And Elohim gazed upon that beautiful light, and Elohim made distinctive the light from the darkness. And to the light Elohim called out the name Ya'um, and to the darkness he called out the name Leah Laha. This was the close and the dawn of the first age.
The Ketub Abarayas, or the Paleo-hebrew, is a language over 5,000 years old. It chronicles a story branching forth from ancient time. His story, Yahweh. Walk into his story. Read the Paleo-hebrew scriptures.
Well, apologies right away for those of you who were waiting or expecting this to go live at 9 p.m. Eastern time. It is now 8:37 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so I'm starting about 23 minutes earlier than anticipated. And I guess it's my channel. I'll do what I want to, but apologies all the same. Getting right into this time. I don't think it's going to be that long of a video, but I do have some really awesome pertinent information to the Millennial Kingdom research. And, I have these different breadcrumb trails and that kind of are running parallel to each other, but tonight they're going to connect. I was really excited about this. You can see that I originally presented on this paper back on September 29th, 2022. So almost 3 years ago at this point. And by the time I had even written this one, I'd already been looking into the Millennial Kingdom for at least 2 years, publishing and presenting 2.5 years before that. As time has gone on, I have added to it. So I'm going to just be scanning through a lot of this. You can read this paper for yourself on my website. I have this and dozens and dozens, hundreds of other research papers, all with a lot of pretty colored and black and white pictures and illustrations for you to follow along with. And what I need to really go over again quickly is a little section I like to call royal pains. And, the poop problem, the fact that when we look at Roman ruins, we see that they were really into toilets. And then in the Dark Ages, in the Millennial Kingdom, they were not into toilets. It would, over there on your right, you see a toilet from the Renaissance era. And you can see here, it took a guy named Sir John Harrington to create the first flushing toilet in 1596. Now, I'm of the opinion, and I put a lot of legwork into this, I'm of the opinion that the Millennial Kingdom manifested upon the earth officially from the years we know, from the 500s to about 1500-ish. So this introduction of the toilet would fall right on the timeline post-Millennial Kingdom. And then it took a guy named Thomas Crapper, where we get the phrase, I need to take a crap. Thomas Crapper perfected it into an art form, but not until the 1860s. Now, this is a huge problem because we have these castles and cathedrals, and there's no plumbing anywhere in there. And, it's not like they didn't have plumbing beforehand. The Romans had plumbing. And apparently these architects who made these beautiful cathedrals, and they tell us that it took hundreds of years, 300 to 400 years to build some of these things. Nobody came along and like, I think you should add in the blueprints here, like some sort of like plumbing toilet system, right? It seems clear that the residents of these castles and these cathedrals did not poop. This is what you're looking at, 2 photos here of what they call a garderobe, also known as a golden tower. The reason why this was apparently called a golden tower, I don't know if you could see it very clearly. There's a little hole there that they tell us they peed out of. It was basically like a long drop, but a multi-story long drop the air would blow that out onto people who were unfortunate to stand below it. And if you're going to tell me that nobody would dream of doing that, according to the official history, they did. It is one of the most retarded things we learn about. Let me give you some examples. Before I do, though, I want to point out that in the wilderness generation, in the Torah, Israel, or Yasharel, the camp was something like 12 square miles. And we are told that they were to carry their poop out. Now, imagine if you are, even if you're on the outskirts of the camp and you only have like a mile to walk, still though, like every single time you poop, apparently you're supposed to carry it out and bury it like a mile out. That would take a lot of your day, especially if you poop multiple times in a day. And this has caused a lot of discussion amongst theologians in trying to figure out what's going on. Well, let me break this down for you guys really quickly here. I'm going to start reading in Revelation 2:17. We read this. He that has an ear, let him hear what the Ruach says unto the called out assemblies. To him that overcomes, I will give to eat of the hidden manna, and will give him a white stone, and in the stone a new name written, which no man knows, saving he that receives it. I'm not going to discuss the stone tonight. I want you to see that there is this promise of manna to that future generation. Now, this next text comes from the Legends of the Jews, Volume 3. So I'm going to read you this, but then I'm also going to read you another amazing early Christian text, a Nazarene text, which actually backs up what they're talking about here. And I love it when you get 2 kind of forms of research, Christian and Judeo, that agree with each other. And this is one of them right here. There were good reasons, and this is talking contextually about the wilderness generation again. And there were good reasons for not exceeding a day's ration in the daily downpour of manna. And if you guys will recall, 6 days they were to go out to collect the manna. On the 6th day, you collect a double portion for Sabbath the next day, and you weren't to collect more than you were supposed to or be able to eat in that day. It would spoil, it would go bad, except for the 6th day in which you carried over the 7th. First, that they might be spared the need of carrying it on their wandering. Secondly, that they might daily receive it hot, which is kind of interesting. And lastly, that they might day by day depend upon God's aid, and in this way exercise themselves in faith. While the people were still abed, God fulfilled their desire and rained down manna for them. For this food had been created on the 2nd day of creation and ground by the angels. It later descended for the wanderers in the wilderness. The mills are stationed in the 3rd heaven, where manna is constantly being ground for the future use of the pious. Now, I know that there's a lot there, but I want you to see the next line. For in the future world, manna will be set before them. Whenever you read in Jewish literature about the future world, it is always referring to what we call the millennial kingdom. It is the 1,000 years of Sabbath rest in which the set apart saints, those who observe and keep the Torah, the instructions in righteous living, were to judge the Gentiles. And it says there that in this time, in the millennial kingdom, this is one of the definitions we get, that it would be where they would go out and collect manna as well. And so the question I've had for the longest time is, do we have any kind of residue of that? Can we find any kind of evidence, any footprints that would indicate that this manna was feeding the people that generation? And I think I have some. Give me a little bit of time. Manna deserves its name, bread of the angels, not only because it is prepared by them, but because those who partake of it became equal to the angels in strength And furthermore, like them. So that I should have put that in red there too. That's amazing, right? So the people who would have been eating this in the millennial kingdom would have been equal in strength to the angels. That could explain right there a lot of the tech we see. I mean, when we're looking at like the artwork, for example, and we're like, what kind of mortal could have made that? Like, this literally was made by people who were equaling angels in ability and strength and know-how. And furthermore, like them, have no need of easing themselves, as manna is entirely dissolved in the body. Boom, there it is right there. All right. This is why the architects of the millennial kingdom did not need toilets, because the manna that they were eating dissolved in their body. Now, there's a catch to this, and this is going back to the tabernacle wilderness generation as well. Yes, it would have been dissolved in their body, but there's a catch. Not until they sinned did they have to ease themselves like ordinary mortals. So, if you transgress the Torah during the wilderness generation, if you transgress the Torah during the millennial kingdom, you're pooping. All right. And you're using that golden tower or whatever they had, you're carrying it in bags, and you're taking the walk of shame, and they're ringing the bell, shame, 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 because they know that you transgress. If you're pooping, they know you transgress. Otherwise, it should dissolve within the body, because you're like an angel. Manna also showed its heavenly origin in the miraculous flavor it possessed. There was no need of cooking or baking it, nor did it require any other preparation. And still, it contained the flavor of every conceivable dish. One had only to desire a certain dish, and no sooner had the thought of it than manna had the flavor of the dish desired. And what does that remind us of? It reminds us of Willy Wonka, when the what's her name, Violet Beauregard, was told not to chew on that gum, and she did, and she became a giant blueberry. It was like I think it was like blueberry pie or something like that in the dessert, and well, we see the same thing testified to in the ascents of Yaakov. This is the Clementine homilies. So this is great. Just to kind of compare notes and show that you have two schools of thoughts very early on that are saying the same thing. It says right here, manna also given to them from heaven for bread. This is speaking of the wilderness generation. And drink supplied to them out of the rock that followed them. That would be this rock that Paul talked about as well, that apparently was Messiah. They actually, picked up this rock and carried it around. This could have been the stone of scone, but that's a different discussion. Which kind of food was turned into whatever taste anyone desired. So there it is, right there. So this manna that was the food of angels that would come down, it tasted whatever you want. Like if you wanted roast beef and mashed potatoes with a beef gravy, like a beef-based gravy, like it would taste like that. A side of green beans and some apple pie for dessert. That sounds amazing. And yet still the people would complain about it because they were just a bickering people. That's another, again, discussion. So then we come over here, and I've personally been here, Palace of Versailles in France. The story they tell us is that it was built by one of the Louis as like a hunting lodge for the weekend. They were so just flamboyant with their wealth, and they would just show up to like hunt deer or something. Just stupid stuff. Like they're building these hallways of like pure gold and the staircases. And then they have the audacity to tell us that, of course, there was no toilets. They had plumbing for the fountains. Oh yeah, they would put plumbing in for the waterways, but there's no toilets. And they didn't even have outhouses. They will tell you that this hallway that you're looking at was filled with crap. Like the tour guides, they will have stories there where they were just like the women were hiding behind the statues and pooping, and that the pooping got so bad that they had to put up like this tape or whatever to keep people away from the king's quarters, because the poop was getting too close to the king's room. Never mind the fact that the king would just poop in his own room. It's disgusting. And speaking of like the Golden Towers, we have stories of Marie Antoinette and this other individual right here on the left. Her name is Francoise de Brancas, Princess de Harcourt. And apparently, this Francois individual was well known to just walk around pooping in her dress. Like, she didn't even bother bending down or go to the corner. She would just poop and it would run down her legs in her dress. That's the story, which is outrageously ridiculous, disgusting beyond, like, that's not even human. Like, I don't know who would do that, but that's what they tell us because they have no other explanation. Marie Antoinette, apparently, at one point, the poop started coming through the floorboards and the walls of her kitchen and just pouring down on her because there was so much poop. And, they didn't have plumbing, of course. And then she would be walking along the outer walls and the poop would be raining down over her and almost hitting her. Like, why would you be walking along where they were throwing poop? Again, this is the narrative that they give us. It doesn't make any sense that they would build these big, beautiful palaces and not care about that at all. And I think everybody listening is probably on board with that. And of course, you see these fountains and other great things. That's at Versailles as well. So I want to skip ahead now. Now, the reason I talked about the poop is because, remember, that's where the manna ties in. And one of the questions I had for the longest time was where exactly was the manna coming from? I was wondering if in these courtyards here with the cloisters, were they raining down in here? Like, where were they collecting the manna? I wasn't really sure. I mean, we know that they weren't putting farms in here, right? They weren't growing their own food, which means that they were dependent on this manna coming down. And so if you need a review on this, we have these baptisteries all over the world. We also have these bandstands. Something I need to add to this paper that I have written recently in my Knights Templars piece, which I haven't broadcast yet, is right there at the Dome of the Rock. We also have one of these. It's either octagonal or hexagonal shaped. This building right next to it. And they can't even explain what it is at the Dome of the Rock. They don't know why the Muslims built it. And I love it. We see these all over. And right here, you see they just told us these are bandstands. Of course, these baptisteries were not really to baptize people in. These would have held some sort of engine, and we don't know exactly what it is. Some sort of engine that worked with the domes and, worked for harvesting the energy from the ether. For the health of mankind. I mentioned a lot like a tokamak engine. That's one of the theories out there that had something in there. Like you see this here, I can't wait to go. I'm going to be going here this year to the Pisa Baptistry of St. John. They told us it took hundreds of years to build this. It was a massive engine. To put this, it's called the baptistry. So they built this huge building. Apparently has this little baptistry in the very center of it, which is outrageously ridiculous that they would build it, when they could perfectly go into a river nearby and baptize people. That's what they would do, not in this, stagnant little pool. And we have these all over Florence Cathedral, so on and so forth. All right. Here's another one right here. And we see these in Islamic mosque all over the world as well. All right. So let's talk about reliquaries. Or reliquaries. I think they're pronounced officially reliquaries. And at the time when I published this a few years ago, I was a little unsatisfied with the results. I knew that we have these amazing reliquaries all over the world. These are found in cathedrals, castles. Now they're mostly in museums. The Catholic Church today, well, these are things of beauty. They often, stand up kind of tall vertically. Some like the one on the left here, you can see it looks like it looks like it should hold it almost looks like a cash register. It looks like it should hold a loaf of bread or something. But they would build these gold stands, and it would have something that you put in the middle. And nobody could really figure this out. Was this for heating in these castles? Was it for light? Was it for the, like little mini energy harvesters from the ether or something that these bigger baptistries, bandstands were doing? Nobody really knows. So let me just go ahead and read this to you, and then I'm going to go through my what I have found that is going to tie all the pieces together, and I think give a really good picture of what was happening in the Millennial Kingdom during the Middle Ages. Reliquaries can be found adorning the rooms of palaces, castles, and cathedrals across the realm. They are indeed stunning contraptions, and our controllers don't know what to do with them, which is true, which is likely why they have been repurposed for displaying something so simple as a finger bone or a toe jam nail, like things like that, a lock of hair. The claim came from like one of the saints, or a finger of Saint James the Great, or the Less, or whatever, Saint Philip. Of course, the saints have yet to resurrect, you see, as if that is what they were designed for. I mean, that's ridiculous. That's a ridiculous notion that they would design these reliquaries to house fingernails and little toe bones and things like that. It's stupid. Or a tooth collected from the tooth fairy. So look closely. The reliquaries are not so different from the many empty towers, baptisteries, and bandstands which we have already seen, if you read my full report, complete with the spikes and spires of cathedrals. They are empty shells because apparently the medieval designers enjoyed crafting things from precious metals by which nothing would be placed within them. And we have a little bit of photo evidence, very few in the 1800s, where you actually see that these like lighthouses and these big, octagonal or hexagonal or round shaped buildings actually had some sort of engine in them. And we see people surrounded, like in this one here. Are they taking it out at that point? For whatever reason, they're posing with it. And we don't know exactly what's going on. We have more of them right here. You can see, zooming in, you could see that clearly there is something in them. They have been taken out. They are no longer have their use. Now, the first iteration of this paper was published nearly 3 years ago, if you can believe that. I mean, the time has flown by. I feel like I just gave that presentation a couple months ago. I was unsatisfied with my findings when placing a date stamp upon it, specifically as they pertain to the purpose of reliquaries, which is why, returning to the fodder stack, I kept on with other areas of my kingdom verse investigation. But as you've probably been aware by this point in a relationship, one thing leads to another and another and another, and then all the pieces start connecting. Breadcrumb trails have a habit of being circular. Now, let's just say I've come up with some new information that should serve this topic well. It not only returns us to the reliquary discussion, but to the Manna aspect of the millennial kingdom as well. So I love this illustration right here. My tip-off came while researching Mary Magdalene and the Maiden of the Tower. That's a whole, like a 2-hour presentation, which I haven't given yet. You could read the paper for yourself on my website. And then studying the painting before you. So take a moment and look at this, because I have to scroll down and you're not going to be able to see it. It is of German origin and attributed to the master of Saint Veronica, circa 1395 through 1425. So congratulations is all I have to say about this one. It looks like he got the whole gang together. And not only that, but they also brought along their respective McGuffins for the portrait. You guys know what a McGuffin is? McGuffin is a term that was coined for the Indiana Jones films. That it's an object that is sought for, that actually drives the plot forward. The Ark of the Covenant, Holy Grail, things like that. And all of these saints have a McGuffin. They have something that would be in all their paintings. For example, Mary Magdalene is often pictured with the alabaster jar. Saint Barbara is shown with the tower. In my Maiden of the Tower paper, I actually show that that Saint Barbara appears to be a copy of Mary Magdalene, appear to be the same person. Of course, Mary Magdalene is the tower. You see like different saints here with like pipe organs and things like that, of that nature. Yeah. Because this is a kings and priests paper, I'll be sure to slip you some of their names. So you have the Virgin and Child. They're enthroned in the middle, and it's difficult to miss them. But then starting with stage left, we see Saints Paul and Peter. Clare of Assisi is next in line. I did a whole piece on her just recently. And she is bent down to Miriam of Mignol with her alabaster jar. And look at Miriam's relationship with the child, why don't you? Miriam is the only one that is touching the Christ child. I think that's very interesting. Let's see. You can tell the woman next to her is Claire because her MacGuffin is the Reliquary. And actually, I'll be talking about Claire tonight. Take a mental note of that. So let me see if you could see it. Yeah, right there. See with the black hair, you could see that she has a reliquary in her hand. That's her MacGuffin. Just below Claire and Miriam is Barbara, crowned with her rook chess piece. FYI, she was a topic of, as I mentioned, my maiden in the Tower paper. And next to Barbara is her twin pillar contemporary, Catherine, equally crowned. So I say twin pillar. Catherine and Barbara are somehow fused together. If you go out to California, you can go to Santa Catalina. Catalina is named after Catherine, and right there is Santa Barbara, right? So you see cities named all over the world after Catherine and Barbara and some of these saints. But again, it is interesting that you have Santa Catalina and Santa Barbara right next to each other. Top row, stage right, I spy John the Baptist and John the Evangelist, though their names would be Yochanan in Hebrew. And below them are the crowned ladies. Agnes is holding a lamb, probably because in Latin her name literally means lamb. Cecilia is the patron saint of music and the pipe organ. She's next in line. Consider Cecilia next time you listen to the Simon and Garfunkel song. And finally, Margaret of Antioch is snuggling up next to her reptilian slayer counterpart, George. I did a whole thing on St. George, why I believe he is closely connected with Elijah. And it is interesting that there's a female counterpart, Margaret. She too was a reptilian, a slayer of dragons. And when they talk about the slaying of the dragons, I will remind you, the reason I say reptilian is because these dragons were within people. Like they were literally slaying people with dragons inside them. So here we have St. Clare right here. Here she is with her MacGuffin. St. Clare showing up for the party with a reliquary was enough to send me on another reconnaissance mission in the Matrix. Will you be happy to know that the reliquary MacGuffin wasn't a one-off? She is repeatedly seen carrying one around. And why is that? A more pressing question relates to the item within the various reliquaries. Could it be Manna? Girl, quit playing games with my heart. Well, here is some of what I've come to learn about her. Now, I put a link there for the wiki article I'm pulling this from, so you can follow along if you'd like. Her name was Chiara Duccio. I'm not going to even try to pronounce that. We'll just call her Claire because everyone else does. Claire was born in Assisi on 7/16/1194, the High Middle Ages. This is just official history, guys. She was the eldest daughter of Favorino Schiffi, Count of Seso Rosso, and his wife, Ortolana. So those would be her parents. Traditional accounts say that Claire's father, Favorino, was a wealthy representative of an ancient Roman family, thereby owning a large palace in Assisi and a castle on the slope of Mount Subasio. Her mother, Ortolano, is described to us as having belonged to the noble family of Fiumi. She furthermore partook in the big three pilgrimages of the Middle Ages to Rome, Santiago, and the Holy Land. Now, I did a whole paper about a year ago on the pilgrimages of the Middle Ages. And of course, the number one of the big characteristics of the Middle Ages is no plumbing, right? Poop everywhere, just mounds of poop. But another major, one of the top 5 descriptions of the Middle Ages is the pilgrimage. Apparently, everyone for 1,000 years was on a pilgrimage. Isn't that interesting? Because the way the Millennial Kingdom is described to us in the Bible is Sukkot. Sukkot is a pilgrimage. Those who did not go on the pilgrimage were cursed. This is Torah, guys. They were keeping the Torah. So Santiago, of course, is a big one because the official bumper sticker emblem of the MK was the shell. If you wore a shell around on your backpack, your hat, your jacket, whatever, it was a sign of resurrection that you have been to Santiago. This is why we still have Shell gas station to this day. This is why you see the Shell emblem everywhere. It's a sign of the resurrection. We would later see in the Renaissance Venus resurrecting out of a shell. There was something much more than just purely esoteric going on there, I think. All right. Perhaps you noted the name of Clare's town, Assisi. I personally didn't highlight it the first time, wondering if you'd notice. So somebody else derived from that same town, as you all probably know, and his name was Francis. Francis has a big part in like the Crusades and a lot of that propaganda. I'm actually really interested to learn more about him. And this is the same guy apparently who spoke to animals. You know, he was a guy that went around preaching to all the animals. This is the guy you see in gardens all over the world to this day. Estimates assign only 1,000 or 2,000 people living in Assisi at the time. And I wouldn't be surprised to learn Favorino, that would be Clare's father, with his palace and castle, was personally funding him. In fact, we are told that Clare became one of Francis's first and most devout followers, and to the point that she founded the Order of Poor Ladies. Now, there's a point to all of this, okay? So pay attention to that. She founded the Order of Poor Ladies, a monastic religious order for women in the Franciscan tradition. If you're wondering where the reliquary McGuffin comes into this, hold your horses. I'm getting to it. You see, the Order of Poor Ladies was different from any other order or convent because it followed a rule of strict poverty. Now, stop and think about that for a moment. Why is a poor, starving woman carrying around reliquaries and staring into them all the time? Like, there's a lot of artwork showing this. Because she's always on the lookout for St. James' finger bone? No. She is gazing intently at the circular object manifesting within it. She is fully dependent upon Al, that would be short for Allahayam, which is the Paleo for God, for her daily bread, both physical and spiritual. And I'm willing to bet that's manna. So here we have more illustrations of it here. And these are in illuminations in hand-drawn medieval books. And the next leg of my reconnaissance mission did not disappoint. I now have at my disposal numerous medieval illuminations which depict reliquaries and the men and women devoted to them. So again, in all of these depictions that I could find in the Middle Ages, none of them shows like body parts of saints. That was all added later, just like all the idols that were added later into the cathedrals. Look at what can be found within, why don't you? Some of you are just aching to tell me I have it all wrong and that they're communion wafers, manifestation of the body of Christ, you know, according to the Roman Catholic Church, still bleeding out on the cross. Perhaps you're correct. But then I will ask, what are communion wafers, or the body of Mashiach, if you prefer, doing in reliquaries to begin with? I thought they were designed for holding locks of hair and other trinkets. I mean, that's what we're told. And if they were strictly employed for communion purposes, official history certainly doesn't seem interested in badgering that point. You'd think Orthodoxy and the RCC, as well as numerous other Protestant denominations, would continue putting them to work. But alas, like bandstands, baptisteries, and towering spires, they have lost their usefulness. They're now just cake toppers. Perhaps something else is going on in these illuminations after all. Now, take a moment to look at these here. Again, we have the reliquaries. We have the communion wafer inside. And this time they are surrounded by angels. And now the question I have relates to the sheer number of angels seen hanging about the reliquaries. Again, I just pages and pages of artwork from this time period that depict this. And these are cherub angels. Time and again, I have noted the relationship between MK Tech and the spiritual realm, even moats with dragons. I've shown that with the star forts, star cities, the moats, the waterways. It wasn't just a health thing. It actually had connection with the spiritual realm. And now we have additional evidence for it. Look closely at where the angels are positioned. Their tie-in with the Ark of the Covenant is an unmistakable one. You can see that right there at the bottom right. That is an unmistakable Ark of the Covenant depiction with a reliquary in the middle. And in every single instance, we observe manna materializing within. Communion crackers are materializing within. Sure, let's go with that. Is this how the kings and priests of the Millennial Kingdom were nabbing their daily food rations? I've already made the case for manna being a staple of the MK, but up until now, I wasn't completely certain how it was accomplished. And now you know. A morning visit to the boulangerie is only one step removed from Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. It needs to be on everybody's bucket list, but who really needs that when the spiritual world was materializing their daily bread for them? Here's another really interesting medieval picture right here. And yet another late medieval era illustration highlights the sheer number of communion wafers forecasted in the daily weather report. Now, just so we're clear, I grew up too with these communion wafers, right? These kind of, they're obviously taken from unleavened bread. But I am curious if this tradition, even the way tradition goes down today in Orthodoxy, RCC, a lot of Protestant denominations, is actually just kind of treading from what was happening then. Now, the story, which it is, this picture is quick to tell, harkens to the Exodus generation, right? I get it. But then let us not overlook the contemporary fashion. I mean, that might as well be Robin Hood and Little John and Friar Tuck collecting their daily food rations. I mean, it looks to me like it's a contemporary piece. I don't know why there's a naked boy there. Whatever, we'll just let that slide. Now, this was an interesting one here because, again, we actually see a priest giving communion. And there is a reliquary right there. Again, you see the round, flat, circular object within it. And I will point out, again, if these are just communion wafers and not manna, though I think it's manna, why do they why are they storing them? I showed you actual pictures. Like, it's weird. Like, why are they just storing it in there? It's still, there's something about that it's not connecting right. What's also interesting about this picture here, now you see them between the two pillars of Freemasonry. This is what our Freemason inheritors would run with. You're going to see the two pillars all throughout MK architecture, by the way. But what's more interesting about this picture is the fact that you have a crescent moon above this, what is this, hexagonal? It could be octagonal. It looks like a hexagonal dome above. And so it's a crescent moon. This is what the Ottoman Empire would later run with and say it is the mark of Islam. I have research on this that says otherwise. I don't think this is just for pagan god worship. I think there's more to it than that. But that there, right there, we have a MK illustration that shows that the crescent moon above these dome buildings was not for Islam. It was for Christianity. So I think that's really interesting right there. That's actually all I have to show you tonight. It's going to be a short video. Usually I give these 2-hour presentations. This one's 40 minutes. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Again, you could go to my website. You could read this paper for yourself. There's a lot of stuff here as well as all my others. And let's do this again sometime, guys.